Hello, and welcome to the Learning Hub series on annotation strategies. My name is Sarah Collins. I'm the writing coordinator in the Learning Hub, and I'm here today to provide you with a short discussion on the second step of annotation, reading. If you watch these videos and consider their strategies and tips as you work on assigned readings for your college coursework, you'll find you have a better understanding as well as a stronger recall of what you're reading. As a brief reminder, annotation is the practice of interacting with the text, which includes note-taking, but also means having an open discussion with the text to determine what you understand, what you don't understand, what you agree with, and what you disagree with. The physical appearance of annotation can be anything that helps you learn the material better, but often includes markings, writings, and highlights that you should cover your text with before, during, and after you have finished with your readings. Today, we're going to talk about some annotation strategies you can adopt for when you actually read your text. After you conduct your pre-reading investigation, the reading stage is when you perform several crucial steps to improve your reading comprehension. These steps include isolating and defining unknown words or phrases, identifying key details, and talking back to the text. Let's talk about each of these steps in more detail. Before we dig into the tasks of annotation while reading, it's important to stop and consider what your annotation style is. What will work best for you and your understanding of a text as you read through it, as well as your recall of what a text is about when you review those notes. Keep in mind that there is no one right way to annotate. Different strokes for different folks, right? The important thing is that you find a method that works for you, and that you're consistent in the ways that you use it each time you take on a new reading. Use the same symbols for the same thing each time, underlining important points, use arrows to connect margin notes to the text, use brackets to embrace important lists. Whatever you like, use it to your advantage. Another useful annotation style to consider is the use of color. Different colored pens or pencils can indicate different notes, and highlighters come in a variety of shades to help you signify things from the text for various reasons. One important and controversial tip is to write on the text. Actually put these markings and notes alongside what you're reading. Many students are wary of quote unquote ruining their text, but trust us, having your notes right next to what you're reading improves your comprehension during the reading process and increases your recall of that reading after the fact. You can use a separate notebook to take your notes, but there's a chance you'll lose some of the connection between what you write down and what the text says if it's removed in that kind of way. If you're still not convinced and for whatever reason don't want to write in the text, especially if you're renting your book or something, try something like sticky notes that you can place into the page so it's still right alongside your text. They even make clear ones so you can highlight and mark the text up as you need to. There are also high quality erasable highlighters and pencils that will take longer to undo but can still leave you with a clean text once you're done with it. All right, now it's time to look at the first annotation task you should consider while you're reading, isolating and defining unknown words and phrases. Have you ever read something and encountered a word or phrase you didn't know? Did you ignore it? Or did you take the time to really figure out what that word or phrase meant, either by using context clues on the page or by referencing a dictionary or other outside source? It only takes a few extra seconds to make sure you understand the words being used to convey the ideas of a text, and that quick work pays off in the long run because you have a greater understanding of the reading as a whole. Here's some tips to make the most of that work though. First, use those marking symbols to isolate it for yourself. Many people circle the word, but you can also use a specific highlighter color to represent unknown or something else. Whatever you do, point it out visually to yourself. Then take a moment and figure out what it means. Often enough, context clues in the sentence or surrounding paragraph can help you figure it out. But sometimes you may need to consult a reference, like a dictionary if it's a single word, or a quick web search if it's a phrase. Jargon, language that is specific to a particular field of study, can be hard to learn sometimes. My husband, for example, is a software developer who just started a new job a little bit ago. He's encountering a lot of acronyms being used in his team's communication that he's not familiar with because it's specific to this company he now works for. He's having to look up things a lot, both in the company's materials and online. So don't feel bad about not knowing something in a reading. This happens all the time and is very normal. The last step to make sure you practice when working with an unknown word or phrase is to actually write down the definition briefly in the text, whether in the margins or on a sticky note. Writing it down not only solidifies the meaning in your mind at that moment, but also ensures you'll not have to look it up again should you have to come back to the reading while studying or reviewing. The next annotation task to consider while you're reading is to identify key details. The whole purpose of reading something is to understand it and hopefully learn from it. The best way to ensure you're doing that is to do the work to find where the text says its most important points and then zip them together into a coherent message or main idea. Let's first talk about the annotation style you could adopt for noting these main ideas. Many people highlight, and that's fine, but make sure you're using your colors to your advantage here. Other people underline, and that's also fine. Still others use an asterisk, which is less obnoxious but can also be easy to miss sometimes, or to know where the important passage begins and ends. Whatever you do, be sure that as you note the main idea, that you don't mark up too little to where you won't be able to get the point later on, and also make sure that you aren't marking up too much, which is often a struggle when everything feels important. Just note what you need to get the point at that moment in the text. Where can you find these details though? I hear you asking. Well, they really can be anywhere in a text, but some good places to look can include the following: the first and last paragraphs of the reading, the first and last paragraphs of major sections, the first and last sentences of paragraphs, and especially when the author repeats themselves. They want you to get it. This is not an exhaustive list, and it's not even guaranteed. No two writers play by the exact same rules when creating their texts. These are just some suggested places to keep an eye on as you read. Really, if it seems important and that it's helping to build the main idea or argument of the text, take a note. Two other things to mention with the identify key details before we move on. For one, it may be helpful for you to jot down a quick summary of each key detail you identify as you read. These short notes will ensure that you are taking the time to grapple with a point and understand it, and give you an additional leg of support when you review the reading later on while studying. Try it out and see what you think. The other thing is that while you are identifying key details and writing mini summaries of each one, begin to think about how they tie together and build to form the larger argument of the entire reading. These key details don't exist in isolation. They are serving as stair steps that you can climb until you reach the proper vantage point to see the whole scope of the thing. Give yourself the proper support by tying the points together and giving yourself climbing anchors so you don't fall before you reach the peak. At any rate, with these tips in mind, you should be on your way to finding those key details and making use of them while you read. Try it out and see how you do. The last and perhaps most important task related to annotation while you're reading is to talk back to the text. This step can mean many different things, but generally it refers to your contributions to the read, the notes you make in response to what you're learning. Specifically, there are 3 ways you can do this: saying yes, no, or maybe, asking questions, and making connections to your life and to your other coursework. Let's talk about each. First is to say yes, no, or maybe. This is a simplicity for the sake of catchy tips to remember more easily, but basically it means to agree with points that resonate with you, be critical of other points that don't jive with your experience or ideals, and be open to points that introduce you to new ideas you may not have heard before. It can be as simple as actually writing yes or I don't agree, or even maybe need to research further in the margins next to the idea you're commenting on, but could be more involved if you have something to specifically add to the conversation then and there. You can do as little or as much as you like, or that you have space for, but it's important to immerse yourself in what's being said and be a careful and intentional thinker as you consider what you're reading. Next is to ask questions to help you better understand or to take your thoughts further. Good questions prompt inquiry, meaning they spark conversation. So the best ones for you to integrate with your annotation practices will begin with who, what, where, when, and especially why and how. You can write down questions when you need clarification because you don't understand, or you can write down questions when you wonder about something beyond the scope of the reading, but don't want to forget about that train of thought later. In any case, questions are powerful tools to help you engage with what you're reading. Take advantage of them. Lastly, you want to start taking your comprehension of the text and expanding it outward to connect with what you know about the world around you. Making connections is an important step because you're starting to apply your new knowledge to yourself and your circumstances. To do this, jot down thoughts about how what you're reading compares to you and your life experiences. Express familiarity with concepts and stories and briefly outline why. State the ways in which the reading may reflect things you've heard before in other classes, and note what those classes or that content is. Connecting the dots with the finer points of a reading will help you once you get to the next stage of annotation, the post-reading stage, where you will bring it all together. It's important to note at this point that you may not find that you fully comprehend a reading once you complete it. even if you carefully followed all of these steps. And that's okay. The work of annotation is difficult, and you may need to reread and even reread again to fully get a text and all of its nuance. Do what you can. Determine the details that you can figure out quickly, and think briefly about how this combination of information can help you as you read through the text. In the next video, we will discuss specific tips and strategies to help you make the most of the post-reading stage. Hop on over to that one to discover even more ways of making your reading journey successful. Thank you for taking the time to check out our resources on annotation. If you want to learn even more, look at our website to find dozens of handouts on writing-related topics, and you can also always make an appointment to chat with a member of our writing staff one-on-one. We hope you have a really great day, and thank you so much for watching.